Denise Merrill is a familiar face in Connecticut politics, and she's looking for a new position. She's up first here on The Real Story. Also, Kevin Lembo is looking for a change of job, too, from the state's healthcare advocate to comptroller. We're going to talk to him next. And finally, Susan Bisowitz is here to make sure that you are ready to vote. You're watching The Real Story. I'm Lori Perez. Our first guest is a very familiar face for people who follow politics in Connecticut. Denise Merrill is currently Majority Leader of the House of Representatives. She's also served in leadership positions on the Appropriations, Education, and Government Administration and Election Committees. She's very active in our state legislature. Denise, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And also joining us, Pat Scully. He's a regular here on The Real Story from Scully Communications. Thanks, Pat.
Great to be back, Lori.
So, Denise, one of the questions that we were talking about before is, why are you willing to give up the Majority Leader's position? I mean, it's a great position. You've been very active and successful, and talk about why you want to make that change.
This is an opportunity, and I think it's like many of these other offices. Some of us have been waiting for years to do something different. I always wanted to have this position after Susan Bisowitz decided maybe she'd go on to something else. It's been 12 years, and I was the vice chair of the Government Elections Committee, which is the committee that governs elections. I was on the state board of the League of Women Voters. I mean, these were issues I really worked on early in my career. So I see it as a fantastic opportunity.
Right.
Well, many times the Majority Leader has designs on the Speaker of the House position.
Yeah.
Did that ever enter your mind that you might be deciding between being Speaker and being Secretary of State, both, of course, high-profile, influential jobs?
It could have gone that way. I mean, I think it's just sometimes in politics, when something comes along, you know that this is the moment, and you have to do it now. It's now or never, because mostly people stay in these jobs for many years, and so I thought this was the chance I'd have.
Are there things that you look back over the past 12 years that Susan Bisowitz has done that you would have done differently?
Not so much differently as I think more needs to be done. When Susan took over the office 12 years ago, everything was still on paper. Mm-hmm. All the business registrations, I still remember you could go downstairs and see these tissue paper, little pieces of paper. That's how we kept all our records. So there's been tremendous progress, but there does need to be more. And some of that's a question of investment in the infrastructure and that sort of thing. But there's a lot of streamlining we can do. And perhaps a slightly different emphasis. I'll probably be a little more focused on the sort of business and job side of it, just because of the time we're in.
Right. And in that meaning, what might you do for business and jobs?
Well, right now, of course, the Secretary of State is where all businesses come to register, and it's also the keeper of all the records about businesses. It's sort of a good government, open government process, but I think it could be much more. I really am interested, after my work this last year on, we had a jobs bill that I really helped craft, and what we saw was that I think everyone is going to have to be focused on getting jobs. Yeah. Every single agency has a role to play. And the role of this office could very much be outreach as businesses come in to register, channeling them either into other parts of the government that might have resources for them, or even more than that. And I've seen other secretaries of state in for example, North Carolina. It's a big office of outreach. Yeah. And those are the kinds of things I think we all need to be doing.
And one of the issues that we have seen come out of this particular race, and it's more of pure politics than anything else, and that has been the complaint about your status as a lawyer and whether you supposedly misrepresented that. And the Republican chairman, as is his job, I suppose, has filed a complaint. How do you view all of that?
Listen, as you say, it's politics. I am an attorney. I've never misled anybody. I am licensed in California. I have been for 29 years, and I've always kept up my license. I've never practiced in Connecticut. I say it frequently. I never intend to practice in Connecticut, but I've had a long career in other facets of the law. I taught about law. That was my project, actually, at the Secretary of State's office for about 10 years. I developed a law and citizenship education program. So I wrote about law and government for children and for teachers. And then after that, of course, I've been legislating for 17 years, and that does have something to do with the law. It's been helpful, that background.
Let's talk about your 17 years there. Yeah. Particularly as the Majority Leader, are there things that you wish you had gotten done?
Oh, gee. To be honest, I've done a lot, not necessarily as majority leader, but more on the policy side. I think I'm known as a bit of a policy wonk, to be honest, but I did everything from, I helped write the early childhood legislation. I was very interested in education, higher education during my tenure. We've really rebuilt our higher education system in Connecticut, probably the greatest accomplishment, I believe, in the last 10 years. Not just UConn either, which is, of course, where I'm from, but also, CSU, the community colleges. So those were great achievements. And I've been sort of in the thick of all those things for a long time. And, of course, we have the campaign finance reform system, which I think was a great accomplishment in this state. We're the only state in the country that passed a campaign finance reform bill without being forced to do it by the public through initiative. It's a huge accomplishment.
Yes.
Should Democrats carry the day? What is your working relationship with Dan Malloy? And conversely, you mentioned campaign finance reform. The Republican candidate, Tom Foley, is against it. You feel you can work with either, or do you think it would be a problem if Foley wins?
Around campaign finance reform, we're firmly committed to it. Whether the governor would be for or against it, I don't think he's proposed eliminating it. It really has leveled the playing field. Otherwise, I don't see how a guy like Dan Malloy would be able to run. He can't write a check to run for office. But to be honest, even a year ago, no one could have imagined the amounts of money that are being spent in this campaign. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know because we sat in the room and tried to figure out what is the right amount to run a campaign. And at that time, I think the most that had ever been spent was about $6 million by a candidate. So we're already in a new world. But I think, whoever becomes governor, we have passed some very strong ethics laws, some very strong campaign finance laws, and I think they'll hold.
Talking about who might become governor or who, might have new seats in the House of Representatives and as state senators, what kind of a task do you think that they have with the budget? I mean, are you happy to be leaving that behind?
I think it could be a very different dynamic going into this. It's going to have to be because there's a lot of work to do. I just hope that whoever comes in is willing to work with everyone. We have to stop the violent partisanship that's gone on, not only in this state, all across the country, because we need solutions. And I think if we could start talking to each other more respectfully, and I've been campaigning on this idea of bringing civility back to politics. I don't know if we can do it, but it really is desperately needed. So I hope whoever comes in, I'm certainly willing to be on the team. I think everybody has to be part of the solutions, and it could be a really exciting time. Yeah. I mean, there are lots of changes we could have made for years and need to make, and maybe now's the time we'll be able to do it.
Let me ask you, Susan Bysowitz is coming on in the third segment. She's going to be talking about getting people ready to vote. Obviously, voting strategies is a large part of what the Secretary of State does. Tell me what some of your ideas are.
One of my great priorities is make voting easy. And I think Connecticut hasn't been exactly in the forefront of this. There are 34 states that now allow some form of early voting or streamlining of the absentee ballot process. Mm-hmm. So that would be the first thing I think I'd look at. Anyway, and voter participation rates in those states have increased pretty dramatically in some cases. So those are some of the things we should look at. But I think it's the greatest job of this government is to get increased participation of citizens. We've got to bring in the next generation. That is something I feel very passionately about.
How about same-day registration? I know that's been at least proposed and passed in the past, but it has yet to become law.
Yeah, we need to look at it, but I think the first step is to have a very solid voter file. Because if you're going to have people come in, and as we did at the University of Connecticut, we had thousands of students come to vote in 2008. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them needed to register on the spot, and it was very chaotic. You need a really good computer system so you can check them off right there on the spot. So that would be the first priority. I think we'd have to have a good file before we could do that.
All right. Thank you. Denise Merrill, she's the Democrat running for Secretary of State. Thanks for stopping by today.
Thank you.
Up next, Kevin Lembo says he's happy to be called a nerd. What's up with that? We're going to ask him coming up.